We're on.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have viewers yet?
Let me go check. Yes. Yes, we do.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, we're going to give it about a minute or so. And these are just the viewers that I see on Facebook. That does not mean these are the viewers, you know, in the totality of everything. All righty. Is it raining where you are?
Yes, girl. Don't you hear the thunder, girl?
I hear it over here too.
Oh, I see. Hi, Eric. I see Erica's on here.
Hey, Eric.
See, folks are commenting. Hey, we're in my closet. Not that I'm in the closet, but we're in my closet.
Oh, let me share this with, let me share this on the Legaleaze page. All righty.
Do you ever tag your pastor in any of these?
I do not, but I talked to him earlier and he said that if he wasn't going to be on right at the beginning, he was going to come in later.
Fantastic.
All right, so I am going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody. I am still Natasha Robinson, the creator and curator of Legaleaze, Please. And I am so glad to be able to have with me tonight my friend and my sister and Grace's aunt, Caprice Carthans.
Hey, y'all.
She is joining us live from her fabulous shoe closet.
Yes.
She, as she said earlier, she's not in the closet, but she's in the closet. Okay. Yes, it's a location, but it's not a lifestyle. And if you are in the Chicagoland area, it is hailing and raining and storming, and usually this is where I would turn everything off and listen for God speaking, because that's how I was raised. But we're not going to do that right now. So we're going to pray that the ancestors will keep us all safe from harm.
Absolutely,
and that
absolutely.
No disconnection whatsoever. But in terms of what we are talking about today, I said that we are going to be talking about Black trans women. We are going to be talking about a conversation that really needs to be occurring more often than it is. I think that it is saying something when we use the term or the hashtag Black Lives Matter, but for the chanters and the holders and the subscribers to that belief, that is not always the case. And we are going to be delving into what Black trans women go through. We will be having a conversation with Caprice about her lived experience, about what she has seen, what she has heard. We are going to be talking about some of the cases that remain unsolved and the reasons why those cases remain unsolved. And we're just gonna have a conversation. As I said earlier, I think it was yesterday, day before yesterday, in addition to sharing, take a moment and share on your pages. This is a grown folks conversation. We, Caprice and I, we attend church together. We are in the same ministry together, which is Ministry of Sermon and Song. However, this is not a churchy conversation, meaning that there may be some times where you want to say something in church, but because of the respect that you have for the pastor and the respect that you have for your fellow congregants in the space, you may not say it. Well, I am a believer that everything is sacred. And right now, even though we are not in a physical sanctuary, we are in a sacred space, but we're going to keep it real. Okay.
100.
100. And if
100.
there's nobody else who I know that can do that, it would be Lady Caprice Carthans.
Guilty.
So I am going to be quiet. I am going to give the space to Caprice so that she can tell you who she is and what she's doing, what she's done, so that you know that this person who is here with me is not just a face. She has witness and she has work, and it is a pleasure to be able to share this space with her. So Caprice, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Good evening, every one of God's beautiful people. I greet you with the holy words, love and peace. I am sitting here in my sacred space, my shoe closet. And if you look around, you'll see that I'm surrounded by tons of those. And we just want to talk about how not just all lives matter, not just Black lives matter, but that trans lives matter. So just from a historical perspective of the LGBT community, it was a Black woman, trans woman, who started the LGBT movement. And it was actually a riot prior to the movement, to the peaceful protests that came behind all of it. Her name was Marsha P. Johnson. And many of you, if you can Google her, find all tons of information about her. I had the awesome pleasure of meeting her and her girlfriend, Sylvia, we were there. They also started another group in 1992 called the Star Group. And it's the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. And there were also peaceful protesters who talked about the awesome lives of trans women, in particular, who are always on the back end of access when it comes to healthcare, legal aspects, all those people. Most of the times when trans folks need to get ahead of something, it has been my experience that we need to have a piece of paper from a shrink that says that we are cognizant, and that this is our decision, So no one else in the human race has to actually go through those particular processes, but we unfortunately do. So right now, we just want to have, my life has been simply amazing. I've been an advocate for about 35, close to 40 years. I'm not telling my age because according to Facebook, I'm still 29. And I've had some amazing lived experience. I'm the 8th child of 23. I have a twin, and I'm currently the matriarch of my family. This amazing black trans woman, I get to say the Black trans woman. I have 72 nieces and nephews, 81 great nieces and nephews, and 5 great-great-greats. So I'm on the top of the totem pole when it comes to LGBTQ. And most of some of the members of my family who actually, came out and want to live their truth, were able to do so peacefully based upon my experiences. So, so we were fortunate to have that. Not everyone gets the chance to get that. And I've worked in the field of HIV and advocacy and health access and healthcare and for a long time. And I wasn't always a good girl. I remember the days growing up, wanting to be a part of some community members and things. And there were certain things that we did. And I went with the crowd. I'm an ex-offender. I got arrested in 1976. I got released in 1979. I got paroled in 1981. I moved to New York for about 29 years. So back in those days, there was a different kind of movement going on. Back then we had amazing, most of the gang members were leaders and they're organizers, and most of the girls back then ran the jails, so I had it kind of peaceful. In today's time, those are not the experiences of most of the trans women who are, actually living these experiences. And my heart goes out because some things just need to change. I remember when we only had 2 options. It was either you was a sissy or you was a dyke, a bodega. That was it, that was all. And I was okay with being a sissy, but as time has progressed and language has changed and systems have changed, there's a whole buffet of language that people can actually fall under for identity reasons. documentations, sometimes your name doesn't match what the document says, but if you're living in your truth, there's some organizations, I will talk about those in the end, for young folks who are actually want to get their name changed to match and their gender marker to change to be supported, and especially now in the times of voting. No one wants to go to the polls now as Timothy when you're on paper and showing up as Tasha in person. We don't want to confuse the people because we're not confused about our truth. But there's some resources that are readily available that I'll share at the end of this our podcast and this live and everything. But my life has been amazing. I still stand on the forefront that I'm a pioneer working. I believe that God created me to do this particular work. And sometimes it gets to be extremely stressful. I've learned recently what I've committed myself to doing is my life is a puzzle. And I think all our lives are puzzles. And sometimes the pieces of our puzzles outgrow the space. How sometimes you put a puzzle together and some of the pieces lift up on the end. They no longer, they'll make the puzzle look pretty. Move that shit out the way. Just take that piece and toss it. But I've also learned to pour into people so that when they come into my space, that I allow them to, they're able to fit directly, peacefully into that particular piece of my puzzle. So it's just time for that. All lives matter. Black lives matter. Black trans lives matter. If you check your history very deeply, somewhere in your bloodline, there's a trans person there. Uncle Timmy or Angel. That's one of your members. They may not be as but they're there. And what I've also learned to do is call folks out and hold them accountable about isms, right? If you're homophobic and all this and stuff, don't be. I'm not trying to figure you out. If you're trying to figure me out, seek some help because I can't help you. I just can't do that. That's not my role. My role is to be a peacemaker and a peaceful provider. And my life is really good now. I thank the God of my understanding for allowing me to be all that I am. And every day I get to embrace God in a different facet, and I find out something new about me every day. I'm like, oh wow, where did that come from? So we're reflections of each other. So what I see in me, I also see in you, and it doesn't matter what our genders are or what our orientations are. We're spiritual beings living a human experience. And if I can connect with you on a spiritual level, the human part, we can get past that. So I don't want to keep talking. Hey, Dominic Daniels, how are you? I see some names flashing up on my screen and everything. But I want this conversation to be realistic, be completely honest about what you want to say. If you're confused about he, him, and her, we can fix that. That's real easy. It takes practice to do stuff. I'm from the old school. This took some work. This was some work. This was not instant. Most of the girls nowadays think that you can add water and stir it 4 or 5 times and put it in the microwave on 6 seconds and voila, you get this. Well, no, I'm here to bust that myth. It's not that. We have to add butter and, vanilla flavor and, little baking soda and all of this to get to where I am. And trans for me means, the word trans means from one to the other. But transitioning, I'm forever changing. When I transition, that means my life has ended. So don't end anyone's experience. If you see someone that's trans, embrace them. If they're having a hard time trying to pull it together, support them, because that could be you. That could be you.
Absolutely. You said something very powerful about support. Do you remember when we were sitting in, first of all, we go to West Point Missionary Baptist Church, the greatest church in the world. And do you remember when we were sitting in the sanctuary before choir rehearsal? And this was the time where you had just been published in the New York Times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you remember when we were sitting like maybe a pew removed from the altar and you told me about your mom's support? Can you share with us what your mom said when you were able to share your truth and how she was basically your first advocate?
So I'm from one of those large old-fashioned families that we had a railroad apartments, where her room was in the front near both doors, so she could check who going in, who going out, and our rooms were in the back. And hey, Deacon Brock, and back then she hung out with a bunch of girls from the Jewel Box Review who were drag queens, you know. And I didn't know that. I had no clue that she did that. That's what she did on, you know, when she wanted to get away, she went to drag shows. I never knew that until later on. But what I realized was that in my early part of transition, anything that major happened in our family structure was brought to the dining room table. And I remember some of my older sisters, they were on birth control because the parents monitored all that back in those days. And I couldn't put my hand on the medical card to go to the hormone doctor on the north side. That not then. But I knew that one of my good girlfriends and said, hey, you know, it's hormone, it's some estrogen inside those birth control pills. My sister wasn't taking them, so I took them. And I began to develop some breasts. And my mother found out accidentally one day. I was playing the stereo out loud and she had went to work and I came out the bathroom and, you know, full figure, you know, full just blooming. And I didn't hear her come back in and she caught me. And I was terrified. And she says, we're going to have a conversation when I get home. And that whole day, I was completely scattered. I didn't know what to expect. I thought my experience was going to be like other people's experience. I thought it was going to be put out and all of that. And when I got home, she was waiting for me. And she says, are you gay? And I said, no, Monty, I'm not happy about that. She said, don't play with me. Don't get ready with me. Are you attracted to boys? And I said, yes, I am. She said, okay. She said, is that what you want to do? I said, she said, nobody touched you. I said, nobody violated me. No. It's just, you know, I've been this way. She said, well, you know, I've always knew since you were 4. And she shared with me how, because I'm a twin, twins always do things in duplicate, right? So when my twin brother was getting Tonka trucks and G.I. Joes, I also got that shit. And I was not interested in G.I. Joes and Tonka trucks. So I played with my sister's tea sets and easy bake ovens and all that shit. So she told my father on my 5th Christmas, she said, look, don't buy him Tonka trucks and G.I. Joes. He's not gonna fucking play with them. Yeah, and girls' toys are cheaper. Get her an easy bake oven, get her some dishes, and she gonna be happy. And I got my first easy bake oven at 5. So my mother had an inclination of who I was long before I made the admission to her. And when I admitted to her that this is who I was, she was already in preparation of what to do because my twin and I shared a bedroom in the back for years. She had moved all my stuff out of his room into the infamous living room with the plastic, with the plastic on the couch. She had moved the plastic and all my stuff was in bins. I said, this is your new room. And she told me, if you're gonna be a girl in my household, girls date at 15, girls wear makeup at 15. And I was about 13 at the time. I was like, well, okay. I got my first person curl from her. I had to fall in line with the girls doing the panty check when it was time to come in the house. And for those who don't know what a panty check is, old school mothers used to check the panties of the girls. If you were moist and dewy, she knew you were doing something, conversations, And I remember my first night coming in my truth, she made me stand at the back of the line with the girls. And I was like, she said, no, step back there. You made this choice. This is what we're going to do. And back then, there was no such thing as support or advocacy in terms of all that. But what the knowledge that she had, she used to be supportive. She said, whatever you do and whoever you are, I love you. No more, no less. She said, it's going to be it's a very cruel world we live in. Folks may not be, appreciative or supportive of that, but I always have your back, And Shaw told me, learn how to fight. Learn how to fight, because there needs to be some days you got to kick some ass and take some names, learn how to fight. And I remember her going to one of her girlfriends, Avon Mansfield, who was one of the original members of the Jewel Box Review, and taught me how to tuck. Mama said, you wearing them little tight little hip huggers, but I see your candy. I was like, my candy? She said, I see your candy. So Avon taught me how to tuck. My brother brought me arm shields to stop perspiring so much, because I was developing. And my hormones they were in kind of in sync, but where the male part of me, the female part was growing, but the male part was still doing this thing. She was like, women don't do all of this. And she taught me how to use the nair and so I had some great experiences. Most trans folks didn't get that. And I remember also telling you that how I built my network of friends up, but I wasn't able to invite anybody who was LGBTQ over, to visit and play and stuff. They were my friends who were always, they were already, little baby sissies and little baby dykes. They can come over. You play with them. You ain't got no, she said, you're not 15 yet. You can have a boy over here. None of that was going on. So my mother did her part at raising me, and I was able to pass some information along to other parents who were stuck with how do I raise my trans child? How do I be supportive and all of that stuff?
And what was the thing that she told your family as to how to refer to you?
Now, this was the very first, before language became a part. She told them, she says, look, when I made the announcement to her that night at the dinner at the table, she said, we got a meeting, a family meeting at 6 o'clock. So everybody came to the table. And some of us were doubled up in chairs and all that type of stuff because we ate in shifts. Decided fuck we got out. And she says, Pat, they call me Pat. She says, Pat has an announcement to make. She said, Pat is no longer he, him. It is now she or her. Let's practice that. And she says, and I don't want you to be outside and call him, him by mistake, because someone may be listening, which may fuck up an opportunity for her to move on in her life. So we're going to practice right here, right now. You know, and eventually when they would say he, she, you know, and she'll throw a shoe or some shit like that. But eventually, when they said it once or twice, it kind of clicks in about the language piece. They were able to get that. No one ever thought about that. When you practice change, it takes practice. And sometimes, you know, I imagine her being in the mirror, you know, just talking to herself, practicing saying she. She also shared something with me about she had 2 sons at birth. And at the age of 4, she realized I was not her son anymore. I was becoming her daughter. And she, and when I admitted to her, this is who I was, she had to mourn the loss of a son, still embrace the possibility of raising a daughter. So she could no longer raise me as a man. How do I raise her as a powerful, you know, dynamic woman, you know? And I never knew that until she, you know, told me one day, she says, you know, when I was about 17, she said, you know, you're coming along real good, Miss One. She called me Miss One. Miss One, you're coming along real good. Your boobs is nice, your hair's cute. You got a cute little boyfriend he had. She says, but she said, but I cried myself for a couple of days, she said, because I had to mourn the loss of, you know, that person. And I'm not gonna give you my government name, my dead name, but she called me that person. She said, and I had to embrace Pat and Caprice and all of that, you know. So I had to embrace that, she said, and I had to be okay with that. She said, and I had to structure my friends and my people that I hung out with. I lost a lot of friends because they didn't understand that. But because I love you and I need to support you, this is what I, you know, and oh my God, so that made our relationship much more tighter, you know. And I wish that some folks in society who have trans children or folks who are transitioning into their truth could kind of get to that particular point of, you know, there's going to come a time where you have to mourn the loss of who that was and embrace the possibilities of who that particularly is.
I have never considered it that way, on from the perspective of a parent about mourning what was and embracing what is. I can only imagine that is a process, and I walk away with that acknowledgement and realization, as well as 2 other things. One, from what you have said, what I have interpreted is that the first person to embrace you as a Black woman was a Black woman.
Yes, yes.
Which was your mother.
Yes.
She set the expectations in the from now on in such a way that you either get with it or you don't.
Right, because she told me it's not. She told me she said, Miss One, you're not going to be half-stepping with this. And I'm letting you know right now, my size 7.5 Converse white top will be will be all up in that. Now, if you're going to do this, come correct. You cannot short step. You cannot, you know, you cannot be half-stepping. I'm not having that. You either all in or you're not. Because I don't want to be confused about the commitment I'm finna make, and I don't want you to be confused about the commitment you're going to make. What are we doing? You know, and there were days when I felt like I was kind of lost and stuff, and she gone in and she tightened the bitch up. Mr. One, you okay? You all right? What's going on? The hormones giving you a problem? You know, so we would have those kind of open dialogues, you know, and conversations, just she and I, you know. Yeah. It was very perspective and professional around everyone else, but when we did our one-on-ones, which was, you know, maybe once or twice a week, she'd get me together. Girl, you're slipping, you know, like if I didn't shave too close. She said, girl, I see 3 whiskers. I see 3 whiskers, girl. What's going on? Get that, you know. And girl, I would run and get it, girl. You know, I would run and get it, you know. Because if she saw the flaws before I got into the real world,
Yeah.
you know, other people were going to see that. She
Mhm.
knew what to expect. Other folks didn't have an idea of what to expect. How I responded, you know, made the difference, you know. Yeah.
And I've seen you in action and how you interact and relate with others. And it seems to me, without having met your mother, that you inherited her heart.
I did.
I've seen you, child, we'd have been somewhere everywhere. I remember specifically in our Dare to Care, which is a community event that our church hosts every year in partnership with other community organizations and
Mhm.
and you be standing outside the gate giving tests to people, HIV tests, and the way in which you just cut through all of the pretense, all of the discomfort, and
Right.
you like, hey, it is what it is.
Right. You know, one of the things that our pastor talks is that everybody has a status, and it could be high blood pressure, hypertension, HIV, whatever your status is. Everyone has one, and if you don't get monitored on a regular basis, it can become uncontrollable or completely, tragic. So one of the roles that I play in community is that I'm an HIV screener. I drive an amazing mobile test unit with lights and music and all kinds of shit like that. And, and I'm open to the possibility of folks finding out, what their status and stuff is, and then getting you connected to the proper people so that you can take care of that, if that is your status,
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to continue the free-flowing conversation that we are having.
Mm-hmm.
For those who are watching, thank you all so much. Make sure that you share this on your page. I did make it public. We have a framework of a conversation, but we believe in the asterisk like they put on the church program, which is the spirit is subject to change. The order of service is subject to change, is still guide.
Right, because it's dictated by the Holy Spirit. That's right. It's dictated by the Holy Spirit.
So if and when we need to diverge from this format, we will. But we wanted to at least provide a framework for which to have the conversation through a legal perspective, through a humanity perspective, so that we are able to encompass it all and answer your questions if you have any. So it's, I'm every woman. And I titled it that because when I say Black woman, it may not be automatically understood to whom I'm referring, but I'm talking about Black trans women as well. I say Black women on the spectrum, meaning that there is no one particular cookie cutter experience.
Absolutely. I like that, Natasha. I like that. It's all right, Natasha. I like that.
You're right. You teaching me.
I like that.
And that's a huge compliment coming from you, because if you don't like it, then we got a problem. But just trying to make sure that we use language and words and relationships that are inclusive.
Absolutely.
Inclusive. And I do not identify as trans. I identify as heterosexual, cisgender. Thank you for the term, because I've been working on it. Identify as cisgender, which we'll come to in a minute.
Yeah.
And so when we are talking about lived experiences, I have seen situations where some of us feel uncomfortable in the sense of, okay, am I saying the wrong thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? And so this conversation is, in addition to address the legal inequities that Black trans women face, to be able to become comfortable to have these conversations, and to have it with Caprice as well as myself. And by way of full transparency, I was not going to have this conversation through my lens, because I am cisgender. And so I needed to have someone that I know, that I love and I trust, to be able to say, yes, that's how it is. And no, girl, your slip is hanging. You need to fix that. And that's the type of relationship that Caprice and I have. So this is just an outline. We did an introduction, terminology. What do we mean when we say this? Just a very brief historical background, which Caprice has alluded to in the beginning. And then we're going to talk about Black trans women and the criminal legal system. We're going to talk about it from the perspective of Black trans women as the accused and the incarcerated, and then Black trans women as the complainants or the victims. And the reason why I put complainants down there is I know sometimes using the word victim is triggering, because it is not saying that these persons are victims in terms of weakness. It means that they have been on the receiving side of criminal activity, of violence, and as a result, when their stories are told, when they are reported, which we'll get to that in a minute, the legal term is called victim, but they are by no means victims in life. They are just the complainants who are saying this was done against me or to me. And then where do we go from here? So we talked a little bit about language matters. And so you have a quote from Janet Mock, who says, "For me personally and politically, there's no separating my womanness, my Blackness, my transness from my meanness." Okay, so when we're talking about language, Caprice, can you kind of let us know, and you can talk about these terms that are on the screen, Black trans women, what it was then and what it is now. What does it mean when we say cisgender, gender nonconforming, non-binary, LGBTQIA, and the
QIA, STW, all the so.
Hold on a minute before you get started. To clarify, we are not putting anyone on the spot to defend their identity. That's not what we're doing. What we're doing is we are trying to have a similar entry and access point for understanding what Caprice may mean, or what I may mean, or what different periodicals or books may mean. It's like if I say a red truck, I assure you that my red may not be Caprice's red, even though it's still red.
Right. I may want crimson or cherry or something. Yeah.
Yeah, because you had 100 Crayolas.
Yes.
When you were growing up. So we just want to make sure that all minds are clear and we have an understanding. So, okay, go ahead, Caprice. Go ahead.
So back in the days, there were only two options. There was, and even on applications nowadays, what people sometimes, what I used to do when I used to go out for job interviews, they would have male and female on the box, and they still do nowadays too. And there are some forms that have actually been extended now to include LGBTQ people and stuff like that. But what I normally do, I would check both boxes and let them kind of figure out what they wanted their perspective to be. But the word cis means aligned. CIS, it means aligned. So that means you were, you were born female or born male, or you were somewhere in the surgical process aligned up. That means cisgender. Trans means, going from one gender to the next gender. Gender nonconforming said that you're gender neutral. You don't use the terms he or she, you use they or them in conversations, and even in terms of introduction. Gender nonconforming also means that, I'm here. Pansexual is another new term that's been popping up lately. And those are folks who are attracted to who they're attracted to sexually. And that's usually a period between the ages of 19 to 25, somewhere around that age. And that's a supportive mechanism that they use by identifying as pansexual. Some of them may be a little bit older. I don't know about the experience of those older ones, but I do know about the ones between the ages of 19 and 24, because those are the ones that I deal with. So language is very important, because even in terms of holistic language, what we used to say was cool and dope is completely something different now. And because I get the chance to surround myself with all these 72 nieces and nephews and 87 great nieces and nephews and the great-great-greats, their language is totally different. I don't want to walk into a room and you're having a conversation about me and I not know what you're saying. I need to be clear about I don't want you talking about, I need to be clear about what you're saying, so that when I engage with you, I can have a conversation at the level that you can understand me. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the trans folks, there's going to always be, it forever changes, it's forever something. But to be really simple, if you're not clear about how people identify themselves or how they want to be addressed, ask them. And they'll be sure to tell you, hey, well, I prefer to be called she or her, he or him, they or them, we. So this is another part of the vernacular now.
Yeah, it's been in my experience, and I'm talking about from the legal perspective.
Yes.
That language can be just as oppressive as any knee in your neck, any knee around your body.
Absolutely.
Because by it being oppressive, what happens is, and this is from a couple of weeks ago when I talked about Dr. William Augustus Jones and his book, God in the Ghetto, about how you see your God is then how you see your colleagues, your people with whom you interact. And then that determines your sociology. So your theology orders your anthropology, and then it orders your sociology. So if I worship a God or a system or a belief that says that white men are to be preferred, straight cisgender male are to be preferred, those with privilege, those in middle class, high class, then everyone that I interact with, I am going to put in a hierarchy. And if you do not fit that hierarchy, then I'm going to treat you less than. And it's one thing to have a belief, but when you weaponize that belief into policies and procedures and laws that continue to marginalize within an already marginalized population, then that is a problem.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know what? One thing that I've learned, that liberation is free, and it's so much freedom in liberating yourself by being able to just challenge folks. Hey, if things don't feel comfortable to you when folks are presented to you, call that out.
Yeah.
Call it out.
You have no
there
problem.
May be some consequences behind that, but in the meantime, you've already spoke that, hey, I'm against that. Yeah. That doesn't make me comfortable.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And sometimes, you may be in spaces where folks will get it, and then you may be in spaces where folks may not get it, And rather than, I try not to position myself in places where folks are already agitated and are not willing to be progressive thinkers. I don't get into those particular spaces, so I get a chance to choose where I go and how I navigate. I do. I get to do that.
All right.
I give myself permission to do that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
So just having an historical background, there is a book that I recommended called Queer Injustice. This is the name of the book. It's by Joey Mogul, Andrea Ritchie, and Kay Whitlock. It came out of 2011. And some of the quotes that I found to be just jaw-dropping are the following. The construction of gender hierarchies and their violent sexualized enforcement was central to the colonization of this continent, meaning that how our hierarchy of power and identity is, this is nothing new. This is something that has been infused and affixed in this country and on this continent since the very beginning. Another quote was, the gendered and sexualized policing and punishment of Native peoples by European colonizers served as a foundation for laws, cultural norms, and practices that have criminalized people of color deemed sexually and gender deviant for centuries. Now that's important because there are a notable amount of people who believe that if you were anything other than the way God made you, which is Adam and Eve as opposed to Adam and Steve or whatever the rhythm and the rhyme is, that you are a deviant. So if you believe that inherently, then what will come out of you will be practices and laws and policies that are in alignment with your morals and your and until they change, the laws are not going to change or be
absolutely.
One more thing that was in this book where it talked about the difference between stereotypes and archetypes. And I'm just going to read this quote. It says on page 23, the specter of criminality moves ceaselessly through the lives of LGBT people in the United States. It is the enduring product of persistent melding of homosexuality and gender nonconformity with concepts of danger, degeneracy, disorder, deception, disease, contagious, sexual predation, depravity, subversion, encroachment, treachery, and violence. It is so deeply rooted in United States society that the term stereotype does not begin to convey its social and political force. The narratives it produces are so vivid, compelling, and entrenched that they are more properly characterized as archetypes, reoccurring, culturally ingrained representations that evoke strong, often subterranean emotional associations or responses. In the realm of criminal archetypes, anxiety, fear, and dread prevail, potent emotions that can easily overpower reason. So I found that to be so powerful in the legal sense, in that stereotypes, you know, it's kind of a nuancy kind of term where it's like, okay, if you are Black, then that means, you know, you're good at sports. That's a stereotype. Or if you're tall, you must have done this. But archetypes seems to be more, it seems to have more teeth. It seems to be something that you cannot just shed depending upon the audience. And so this book is talking about the historical outcomes and origins of why those who identify as queer in this country, how what they face is not just naming. It's deeper than that. It's archetypes. It's trying to weaponize your beliefs at the marginalization of another person or a group.
You know, one of the things I noticed about the introduction of the book, it says that the word "in" is in parentheses. So what may be justice for some folks is an injustice to other people. Very, very well put, Natasha. Very well put. Okay.
Yeah. So it's just, there is no way we can have a full discussion about everything in, you know, 90 minutes. But what we at least want to do is start having the conversation.
Absolutely.
Because truth be told, people are talking. So you might as well have the conversations with people whom you are endeared, people who you trust, people that you can share your ideas and your research in safe and sacred spaces. Okay.
I gotta step away a minute, Natasha. I gotta step away a minute. Go ahead.
Okay.
Continue the conversation.
Okay. So right now, what I did not realize, I knew about what is called Stonewall. Now, in some of my research, it's called Stonewall Riots. Riots to me indicate an assignment of blame or shame. I don't deem them to be riots as much as they were uprisings or explosions, where if you put something in a bottle and you shake that bottle so hard and then you take the top off of it, it explodes. And I think that Stonewall is one of those examples where you had lesbian, gay, transgendered persons who had been placed into a situation which is the society of this country. And when this event or this incident happened, that was it. They couldn't, that was it. It's not to say that there have not been other protests or other uprisings, but this is a notable one. And this is 2 days from the anniversary, almost to the date, Saturday, June 28th, 1969. In short, this happened in New York. There were police officers that were trying to engage in, I think, liquor raids or some type of pretense. And then it ended up becoming very violent when you had a confrontation between the police and the population that they were supposed to serve and protect. And so who we have to the left is Marsha Johnson. Is that correct?
Marsha P. Johnson.
Marsha P. Johnson.
And the P stands for pay it no man. That was a slogan. Pay it no man.
All right. So in this picture, you have the advocacy and the organizing headlined by Marsha P. Johnson. And can you talk a little bit about Stonewall and your understanding of it and things like that?
So Stonewall is this amazing bar in New York, and in the heart of Greenwich Village on Christopher Street. And back in those particular days, if you were trans, they considered that you were a female, that you were impersonation. It used to be a criminal. It used to be a crime to impersonate females, and lots of folks who were in early transition got arrested for impersonation. And I think it was I don't remember the number of what it was called in terms of the CO number, whatever the arrest number was. But Marsha P. Johnson had gotten tired of the police saying, "Sir," and "You can't be out here doing this stuff. Take that off," and kept being harassed. And her girlfriend Sylvia Rivera decided one time that last particular time in June that we're not going to do this anymore. Marsha threw that first brick at the police, and they were like, "No more of this," And it started the riot, which led to the LGBT movement.
And this happened in New York in June 1969, right?
1969. Now, she died in 1992, but what was the girl's name? I wrote it down. Hold up. Her name was Lopez. Her last name was Lopez. Mariah Lopez went to the police and said, because they said that she committed suicide. That was not true, because they had the case reopened. Now it's considered indeterminate. So she was not. She did not kill herself. Marsha was a pioneer. She set some standards, and she wanted folks to be able to find peace at being who they were. So her death since 2017 has now been deemed indeterminate. It's no longer saying that she committed suicide, because Marsha wasn't a suicidal girl. She just was not.
And that's important, because when you were talking about the narratives of persons who have lived in this realm, and when you have statistics that are being kept, to say suicide to me legally means, well, there's no investigation. This person did not think enough of their life, so why should the law? That's how it's been interpreted.
Absolutely,
and
absolutely,
it is so important to be able to say, no, everything that is deemed one thing may not actually be it.
Absolutely,
okay.
Absolutely.
And where the advocacy comes in about uncovering not just a truth, but the facts.
Right, absolutely. In order to discover some things, you have to uncover some stuff. And sometimes that can be a painful experience. But if you're serious about who you are, and you're serious in your community base, and you want to make sure that you leave a legacy about the work that you've done, it's important that you share that, you hear those narratives, challenge those narratives, and bring into change.
Absolutely. So we're just going to change a little bit over into, we've gone from language rather. We've gone to history. We've gone to now talking about what does that look like now? What does that look like in the criminal? And I put in parentheses injustice to keep in alignment with queer injustice.
Absolutely.
So when we focus on Black trans women as the accused, there are two cases that I saw that greatly disturbed me. The first one, well, actually both of them are in film form documentaries. You have, and I can provide the links later, you have Isha Love, who is actually from Chicago. Her story, and I can't tell in the way that she tells it, but I can provide a summary. The summary is that she was on the west side of Chicago. There were some men who were very derogatory to her and to her friend. They tried to engage in a physical altercation. Isha and her friend were able to get to a car and are able to defend themselves because they were out.
They whipped them boys' ass, girl. That's what they did. They whipped that ass, girl.
So
I'm sorry.
No, you ain't got to apologize to him whooping that ass.
I'm really not, girl. I'm really not.
No, that's what I'm like. No, you're not. They got into a car. Now, this is where the story changes. There are some accounts that say she lost control and the car, crashed into the leg of the person. There are other accounts that said she drove it into the person to save her life. But the point that I'm trying to make is that she stayed in jail.
Yes, she did.
Awaiting trial for 3 years and 9 months.
For defending herself.
For defending herself. Okay, which adds up to roughly 45, 46 months of jail. Not serving a sentence.
No.
Awaiting trial.
Awaiting trial.
That's the first thing. The second thing is she was housed in Division 9 of Cook County Department of Corrections. Now, let me tell you why that is important. Division 9 is not, it's a part of Cook County Department of Corrections, but it's not on California. It's on that side street. So if you are coming from downtown.
Francisco, it's on Francisco, girl. It's on Francisco.
Okay, so Division 9 is, now I tell you, because I've been in Division 9 a whole bunch of times. Division 9, you enter at the street level and then you take steps or an escalator or elevator to go down. Division 9 usually houses the most violent of offenders, the most heinous of crimes. It's usually Division 9 and Division 10. That's the first thing. But the second thing is that Division 9 is a male division, all male division. There are no women that are in Division 9 except correctional officers, visitors, and attorneys. So here you have Isha Love, who is first presumed innocent, who is awaiting trial, who is housed in Division 9, which is an all-male unit. And one of the things that I also found out is that the issue of hormone therapy was not availed to her. Now, Caprice, can you talk about why that is important?
Well, one of the things, society thinks that because you're in transition, don't mean that they have to support you during the transition. It's almost like if because there's a medical cost that goes to that, and I think with her experience, she was buying bootleg hormones, so she never had the insurance card because she never took the time to go and get the Medicaid stuff. So when they went through their investigation to figure out how was she paying for her previous hormone sessions and found out that she wasn't paying for them through her insurance provider, they took upon themselves and said, well, we can't provide them. And if we provide them for her, we'll have to provide them for the rest of them that want to be trans. So to avoid that whole conflict, they were not allowed to give it. Now, if she was on any kind of psychotic medication, they may have given her an advantage. If she's on some mental health medication, they may have given her advantage. But because she came in strictly with a charge, but not a conviction, they avoided that whole process at all,
Yeah, and it's important because when we're talking about advocating for Black trans women, any trans woman that is incarcerated, if she has not completed, to my understanding, if she has not completed her transition, then hormone therapy, it needs to be considered a vital and viable medication that she needs to take in the same way. If I had a heart condition, I need to take my heart medicine.
What they sometimes say is it's either an elective medication or a elective or corrective. They also use the terms if it's a prevention medication or if it's a medication that's going to take care of the needs of whatever the condition stuff is. So it's all kinds of loopholes that people talk about, but when you're in transition, you should be able to have the same amenities that you have from out there. They should be prescribed just as well inside of an institution. Absolutely,
because what you're doing now is the withholding of that medication.
More oppression, more
oppressing them, and it's forcing a person, a trans woman, to become back to or revert, if you will, back to an identity to which they do not ascribe. In addition to fighting a criminal case. You got all of that going on at the same time. With Cece McDonald in Minneapolis, she waited in jail, presumed innocent, for 41 months of jail time. And it was with her case as well as with Isha Love's case that there was a plea bargain, which means they waited all this time. And when I say waited, I don't mean like they were just sitting on their hands and knees. What I'm saying,
no, ma'am. No,
the
ma'am.
system broke them down and got their jail time before they got their conviction.
Absolutely.
Because with aggravated battery in a public way, which is what Isha Love was facing, and I can't remember Cece's charge, it is only maybe a few months difference between what they served and what their possible maximum is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So with Isha Love, once she pled guilty, basically her sentence was time considered served.
Right, time served, because she had done the time.
She had already done the time for a crime that she was presumed to be innocent. Okay.
Based upon the fact that she was only defending herself.
Only defending herself.
Only defending herself.
Exactly.
And the law is that, you have a right to protect yourself. You have a right to bear arms. You have a right to do all those particular things. But when it comes to trans folks, because we've been oppressed for so long, the narrative is that we're used to this, which is why some of them are forced into doing commercial sex work and not having equal opportunities to have access. There's a lot of smart trans folks out there.
Yeah.
I suggest that if you got someone who are functional, send them back to school. If you provide college education and grants and stuff for folks that don't want to do anything but still weed on the corner, give a girl a shot. Do some production. Bring something to the table. To switch the narrative, to change the narrative. And
one of the pieces of data that I retrieved, which Caprice, told me that this statistic is way higher.
Much more.
Because of the fact that you are now talking about situations where those who are transgender individuals may either not report criminal activity or it may not be reported by law enforcement.
Absolutely.
So when it says 1 in 6 transgender individuals will be behind bars in their lifetimes, that is a statistic from the National Center of Transgender Equality, but that number is actually very higher. It's
much more higher than that, especially nowadays, because remember I mentioned earlier that back in the days, because I went to prison, I had a little stint, I was a bad girl, I did some stuff back in those days. And during those particular times, we had organizers, people weren't thinking about gender or ideology. They were organizers, and the girls ran the jails back in those days because it kept the men calm. It kept the system, and nowadays there's a whole different perspective on, because folks, I don't know what their perspective is, but it's a whole different perspective now. And folks are put in danger more so, especially trans folks, you're put in danger. If you haven't had the full reassignment surgery or surgical intervention, you're placed in a space now where, your oppressor, you're outnumbered by your oppressor. So how folks feel about whatever experiences they've had with trans folks or whatever communication they've had with them, you're now in a den of wolves, and you're expected to do what they do, survive.
Yeah, I remember specifically when I was with the public defender's office, we would pick up different cases based upon the day we were assigned for bond court. And this particular day, I was a younger attorney. I couldn't have been more than 27, 30. One of my clients was transgender, and I can't remember what her name was, but it was not in alignment with what her identification said.
Right.
And so when I was interacting with her and interviewing her, they had to put her in a completely different cell, because at that time you couldn't put her with the men because she was not a man.
Right.
But you also couldn't put her with the women
because she was not a female.
Right, exactly. And so when I was talking to her, I could not even imagine what that was like, where you are caught in between the two. We're not even talking about the criminal part. We're talking about the humanity part.
Absolutely.
Where with every time her case was called, she was never called who she was.
Right.
Called who she was. And that further
oppressed
her. Yeah, because she felt, who's going to advocate for me? Because you keep calling me this name but I'm really this person.
And even sometimes with that, Natasha, when they show up in court, if you've been there, if you got arrested on a Friday, you don't get to court until Monday. You know, whatever your presentation was on Friday, it's not the same presentation on a Monday morning.
Yeah, and I assure you.
So if you're standing in front of a judge looking like
exactly,
it's crazy, you know. So the confidence that you had on Friday night, you no longer have now. Even though you may have been through this a couple of times, your appearance is going to say a whole lot of things to other people who may not understand what that experience is like.
Which reinforces the deviance and the craziness
Absolutely.
that is ascribed to Black trans women. It's like, oh, you're just out of control. You know, you're doing things because of some type of proclivity. And it's more than the stereotype, it's the archetype that the witnesses, the authors are talking about. So we transitioned from Black trans women being accused to Black trans women being the complainants of crime. And these are just some of the names on the top half. As of November 2019, at least 20 trans women or gender nonconforming people of color were victims of homicide in the United States. That's as of 2019.
And that number is much higher.
It is way higher because of the reasons that we have stated before. So in 2019, according to the data, 26 gender and non-binary people were killed. 91% of them were Black women. That's just in 2019. And we argue that that number is higher because you cannot take into consideration those cases that had never been reported.
Absolutely.
In 2020, this is as of June 2020, 2020 has already seen at least 16 transgender or gender nonconforming people fatally shot or killed by other violent means.
Right.
At least because too often these stories go unreported or misreported, meaning they're not told at all, or when they are told, the emphasis is on the sexual and identity, gender identity, as opposed to the crime itself. Okay, so just in these few months, you've had, and we say their names with reverence. You have Monica Diamond, who was 34, she was killed in Charlotte on March 18th. You have Nina Pop, who was 28. She was killed in Sikeston, Missouri on May 3rd. You have Dominique Remy Fells, who was 27, who was murdered in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on June 3rd. You have Raya Milton, 25 years of age, murdered in Liberty Township in the state of Ohio on June 9th. And then you have Yana Dior, who was 21 years old. I will not show that video here because it is violent and it is very triggering in that I don't want to reinforce or promote the violence that already occurred against her. She was in the city of Minneapolis, Minnesota, at the same time that there were uprisings and protests about George Floyd.
Yes.
She was at a store and she had at least 20 to 30 persons who violently attacked her, and the majority of that composition was Black men. They attacked her while just the stone throws away, when they're saying Black Lives Matter. We're angry about George Floyd. You have some of those same people attacking her on June 1st. She is still alive. She is recovering from her injuries, internally and externally. And in just reading different pieces of writings in which she has spoken, she is just, there are really no words.
None.
In terms of the fact, well, didn't we just say Black Lives Matter? Well, they couldn't.
They could not when hers didn't.
Yeah. And so that is something that we definitely need to communicate, that when we say Black Lives Matter, we mean all Black Lives Matter. It does not make sense to have a hierarchy within a hierarchy. If we are holding areas and spaces of accountability then we need to speak truth to power about why our Black trans women are not being protected by us, the community, and by law. Some things definitely need to change for the better. And
I just saw a video the other day, Natasha, and there was a girl. She was on Facebook Live, getting in her car, and she was completely broken down. And she said that she was just going to the neighborhood store that she grew up in. She was going to the store to get her something to eat. She grew up in this neighborhood. It was in Ohio. She said she grew up in this neighborhood, and everybody knew her. She said, but all of a sudden, she said she had been because of the COVID, she had been out in a couple of months and stuff, but she just decided she wanted to go get her something to eat. And when she went in the store, she said folks immediately started looking at her because of her, based upon her height. And she looked pretty kind of connected, well together, what have you, but her height had her fearful that she ran back to her car and pulled off, and she was in complete utter disarray because she felt threatened because folks were so upset about what's going on in the world with George Floyd and all this stuff, but she didn't want to die. She did not want to die. And this is a neighborhood that she grew up in all her life. She hadn't been out in 3 months. And all of a sudden now she's fearful of being able of going to the store to get something to eat.
And that's just,
insensitive.
Yeah, it's insensitive, it's systematic, it's where at this point, there are those that say, okay, well, we'll get to Black trans women after we get this Black thing. And it's like, no, it's not an either or, it's a both and. Right. It's like I'm gonna say, ain't no half stepping. You either in it or you're not. Exactly. It's all or nothing. It's all or nothing. Exactly. So these are just some of the resources that was in the slide presentation. Where Justice Ends, that is a documentary that Caprice and some other pioneering advocates, they were on the panel. It's a great documentary that talks about life in the criminal justice system from the perspective of Black trans women. You have Trans in America. That is the documentary that talks about Isha Love. You have Free CC, which talks about CC McDonald. Laverne Cox is the co-producer of that. You have the information for the books, and then the websites are just they're plentiful in the sense of knowledge, but knowledge is just one piece of the puzzle. The other piece of the puzzle is access, and then the other piece is the embodiment of it in your mindset and in your deeds. Because you can read everything in the world, but if nothing changes,
right, if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Right. I'm so sorry that happened. Then it's like, okay, well, thanks, but no thanks.
Right.
Okay? We have to be. Go ahead.
So here's one piece I want to leave to our viewers before we go off the air.
Okay.
That this year it's very important that everybody votes, especially trans folks. If you're at the age to vote now, and if you're uncomfortable with your showing up in your true self and your ID doesn't match any of that, there's a translifeline.org who've partnered with Twilo. I don't know what the acronym for Twilo means, but if you go to translifeline.org, they are providing financial support to have your documents changed to match up with who you are. They just got a grant for $153,000. That can go a long way for some identification for folks. It's important that trans folks not be fearful to be at the table. Come out and vote. If we want things to change, you need to be part of that whole change process. So here's an available resource that I want anybody who knows anybody of the trans experience, that are having issues with their documentation. Translifeline.org.
Okay.
Follow
Keep talking while I'm going to type it in the chat. You said
Translifeline.
Translifeline. Okay.
.org.
All right. I'm going to type it while you keep talking.
Yes.
Keep going. I'm gonna type it. There it is. Thank you, Deacon Flo. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, so all lives matter, but tonight we're talking about Black trans lives that matter. So, you know, we're on the forefront of many movements. We're part of many families. We're part of a lot of great organizations. We support community in aspects, but yet we don't get an opportunity to be, you know, recognized or honored and because of what we contribute. So it's now time. You know, so if you're going to be about all lives matter and how all Black lives matter, don't forget to include trans folks in that conversation.
Absolutely.
Don't forget to include trans folks in that narrative. We exist. We're here. We're supportive. You know, I just wholeheartedly hope folks to just say, you know, stand against hate. You know, hate is just something that we do not do. I don't do. I don't think it's enough. We're at the point now where folks are angry, especially young. They're angry now. They need to vent. So, if you want to be an army of you know, supporters, include the trans folks in your process. You know, we'll show up as long as you respect and honor us. We'll show up. We ain't coming to flirt with you. We ain't coming to date you. We ain't coming to break up no happy homes. We're coming to be supported. But you have to. But the invitation needs to be completely love based. You know. I've been to a couple of rallies and stuff, and folks were like, you know, oh, what's she doing here? Well, all lives matter, goddammit. That's why I'm up in here. And because y'all not speaking about me, I need to be visible so that I matter. So that, as a matter of fact, I brought a couple of girlfriends through. We all matter. You know, so if that makes you uncomfortable, then, you know, you're really not here for the right cause, you know. And most of the time, we kind of weed those little folks out. Yeah. But all lives matter. Black trans lives matter. Thank you, Natasha, for inviting me to this forum. Thank you, everybody that joined in with us. I saw a couple of names pop across my screen. Monica James. You need to Google Monica James, another advocate. Write that down, Natasha. Monica James, wonderful. She's had the prison experience. She's an organizer now. She's doing great work. Google her. One of my little colleagues and good girlfriends. Yeah.
All right. Well, I just want to thank you. I had no expectation other than you would show up exactly who you are and who you have been. And your work and your witness is not just inspiring, but it holds me accountable.
Yeah.
And making sure that what I believe is in alignment with what I do. And so I just want to thank you for having this conversation that we would having it publicly, and hopefully we can, you know, change some lives, at least change some hearts in the journey to doing what matters and what Lord requires, which is justice, you know.
The Bible says in Jeremiah chapter 1, verses 4 and 5, and the word of the Lord came unto me saying, before I formed thee, I knew thee. So before this experience was even thought about, God knew I was going to be trans. He knew I was going to be fantastic. He knew I was going to be fabulous. And he set me aside for the work that it is that I do now, you know. And I'm not just the only one. I'm not, you know, you were set aside. You were chosen. We didn't agree to this at first. We didn't agree to this. We was like, God, now I don't want to do that. Yeah. And God was like, yes, you is. Yes, you is.
So I am just glad. I'm thankful to you. What we're going to do is we're going to end now, but we're going to go back and see if there are, you know, any questions after this, so that we can go into actual Facebook Live, the chat, and we can address any questions or concerns that you have. Caprice could put in their websites, names and numbers of resources. I'm going to provide names, resources, and numbers. And in that way, let's just keep this conversation going. Absolutely. And let's make sure that it does not just talk, that it doesn't just affect our talk, but it affects our walk. And let's make sure that when we walk, we're walking with each other, okay, absolutely, as opposed to away from each other. So thank you. I love you always.
Love you too.
I see some shoes in there that I'm gonna come back and get, but we'll talk about that offline.
Girl, come up. What size you wearing, Natasha?
Well, now after having Grace, I'm probably at a 12 now. I know you got something there.
No, I got some 10s and a few 11s, but I know where they got some. I know where they got some 12s at, though, girl. I know where they at, though. I know where they at. Look
out for me. Thank you. Thank you. All right, you all have a good night. Caprice, I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, love you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.